everybody. Welcome to, I can't really see, but welcome to CHRISTY chapter 20. Okay, where's my chat? There we go. Hi, Frida. All righty. I'm trying to get you guys to read as much as I can to you guys because it's that time of year. And after the holidays, there's going to be more reading. All right. Chapter 20, Christy by Catherine Marshall. All afternoon, I waited for some report from David on what he had learned during his conversation with Lundy Taylor. David was nowhere to be seen. Finally, toward dusk, I decided, hey, Jilly. Toward dusk, I decided to investigate under the schoolhouse for myself. As I reached the edge of the playground, a pig walking oddly, almost on a slant, came from under the building and crossed near me. I had no great knowledge of pigs, but I had never seen one look like that. Something else was odd, too. I stood at the foot of the schoolhouse steps, trying to think what could be giving me such an uneasy feeling. I tried the door. It was locked, with everything apparently in order, and then I realized what was missing was the usual background noises of the hogs rooting and scratching and snuffling under the building. And there was a strong smell, not of pigs. Suddenly, I was panicky about what I might be about to find. I best go get David, I thought. Wherever he's been, perhaps he'll be back for supper by now. So I picked up my skirts and walked rapidly, almost running toward the big house. David met me on the porch. What's the hurry, Christy? I think something's wrong. At the schoolhouse, I mean. Will you have a look, David? I trailed his long strides across the yard and up the hill. Borne toward us on the evening breeze was the same strong odor. Then, as we turned the corner at the back of the building, I almost stumbled over a broken jug. Nearby, several hogs stretched out asleep. Too sound asleep. They did not stir as we approached. They were breathing heavily and rhythmically. David stopped and stared at the pigs, walked around them, even poked the first one and then another with his foot, but they responded not at all. Just snorted on. Queer, I don't get it. Then he walked on a few paces and stopped to look under the floor. It's almost too dark to see anything. I'll have to go in under there. Already he was crouched over, making his way under the building. I could hear his fingers groping and then some boards being moved, and then he whistled loudly. Holy thunder! Christy, you should see this. This is something. What, David? Somebody's fixed a place under the floor like a little storage room. There's a lot of jugs in here. Moonshine whiskey. Christy, can you take them from me? I'll hand them out one at a time. The jug he thrust into my hands was full and heavy. I set it on the ground and reached for another and another and another. Finally, now this is before Prohibition, right? Finally, David came out, rubbing the dust off his hands. He stood staring at the collection of jugs, a puzzled crease between his brows. So this was what Lundy didn't want Burl to find. But Christy, this can't be all of Lundy Taylor's doing. That little room was well planned. No boy could have done the carpentry work either. Adults were involved. Blockaders, that's who. But what did Lundy say when you talked to him? I never got the chance. He slipped out. I spent half the afternoon searching for him. Davis, is this meant to be a joke? Certainly not. How could it be? Well, I mean, under the church is a crazy place to store moonshine. And there isn't space for many jugs either. You should see Bird's Eye's cabin. I think he's built it against a cave where he could store 100 jugs. He looked at me thoughtfully. If you're right, Christy, the words came out slowly, then the blockaders are trying to make me look like an ass. Well, could be. I suppose they think that church schoolhouse I built is my pride and joy, so they'll store their moonshine practically under the altar. Sapheads. What I wouldn't give for a chance to knock their heads together. I could, too, if they lay down their blasted shotguns and fight like men. Well, I'll show them. David was speaking from between clenched teeth. This is my problem with David. He's a minister of the Lord, and he's letting anger and personal revenge, even if it is from the pulpit, he's letting that get in his way. He grabbed a jug, uncorked it, sniffed it with an expression of distaste, turned it upside down, and the amber liquid gurgled and spattered as it poured onto the ground. I backed away. Isn't corn whiskey clear? He's uncorked another jug and swung it upside down. He was shouting now. I'd like to heave this infernal stuff right in the face of some people I know. Pickle their brains in it. I had never seen David so angry. His hands were trembling, and even in the murky light, I could tell that his face was flushed, while the little dip where he had broken his nose was dead white. The yard was beginning to smell like a brewery. David, will this smell go away before church on Sunday? I don't know, and I don't care. If the building smells like a distillery, then maybe that will alert some sleepers to what's going on around here. But you and I should act as if we don't notice a thing. You mean we smell the moonshine and pretend it's roses? David was silent a moment, breathing hard. All right, Christy, bring me back to earth. I shouldn't lose my temper that way. He went on uncorking jugs and pouring. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'll put the empty jugs back in their hiding place, but leave this big hole. Then tomorrow and Monday, we'll watch for reactions. We're bound to get some clues. David, those pigs still haven't moved. Do you suppose? No, that couldn't be. Oh, yeah, it could. Remember I told you that horses like Prince won't drink a drop of water with mash in it? Well, pigs like nothing better. Only this time, they got more than they bargained for. Those hogs are blind drunk. Drunk pigs. That one we saw walking across the yard, wobbling from side to side. How funny. He managed a wry smile. The pigs are funny, but the situation isn't. Sunday passed without our gaining any new information about the cache of blockade liquor. The men and boys who ordinarily spent as much time wandering and lounging in the yard as they did in the church service confined themselves that day to the front yard. Then that evening, as we were leaving the dining room after supper, David tapped me lightly on the shoulder. I need to talk to you. Not inside the house, though. How about we walk? Outside, it was a clear night with a brilliant canopy of stars. Silently, David took my arm and steered me across the yard toward the wide trail that paralleled Cutter Branch and led down onto the narrow valley. On our right, the dark bulk of Pebble Mountain loomed over us. To our left, the branch gurgled and sang as always. David sunk in his own thoughts, so I waited for him to break the silence. I've talked to Lundy, he began. Where did you find him? I rode up to Birdseye's place. Lundy was hunting squirrels in the woods. This time he couldn't escape. So? He was defensive, sullen, wouldn't say much. It took some doing, but I finally pried out a little. 2 other boys are in on it, Rate Holt and Smith O'Teal. Smith? But Smith's only 14. I know. But you thought that storage room was their father's doing. You mean these boys are really involved, David? Afraid so. Only Lundy wouldn't give me details. Neither of us spoke for a moment. I was thinking of the O'Teal boy, undersized for his age, with his big black eyes that were always seemed to be pleading for something. When Lundy finally refused to say another word, I got angry again. I admit it. What I really wanted to do was punch Lundy Taylor straight in the nose. Did you? No. What stopped me was that I was too mad. So I warned Lundy that he and his two friends might have to leave school. Told them that their punishment would have to be decided by their parents and the entire mission staff. David paused for a breath. At the mention of parents, Lundy started smirking. It was a dead giveaway about his dad. So that told me I'd been right all along. Adults are managing that setup under the building. Anyway, that sickly smirk was more than I could take. Lundy took one look at my face and lit out for home like a coon with a hound in pursuit. But David, I still don't understand the point of the liquor being hidden there in the first place. I think I do. The pieces are beginning to fit. You remember Uncle Bog saying that he was pretty sure the men who followed the three of you up through the woods that night were not Cutter Gap men? Well, I'm afraid we've got a little blockading business going on right under our noses with schoolboys as go-betweens. As old as the hills, eh? This is before the First World War. David let go of my arm. I stood looking at him, trying to grasp what he was saying. The moonlight put deep hollows in his cheeks, gave him a look of gauntness. David, are you suggesting that someone has a moonshine whiskey business going? That strangers are coming into the cove to get it, and that Lundy Taylor and the others are front men? Something like that. But it still seems too small an operation for that. What evidence do you have for all of this? Not much, I realize. It's mostly guesswork. You see, right now, there's considerably stricter law enforcement for blockade runners in North Carolina than in Tennessee. They've got a cranky sheriff. They've got a county sheriff over there now who's cutting down barrels and furnaces right and left. So now good whiskey is in more demand here in Tennessee than it had been in a long time. What's more, I've made it easier to get the stuff to the state line by building and improving the road from the flag stop as far as the mission. But I just can't believe that they dare count on a spot under our school building as their steady supply depot. They'd dare anything. That might be stupid, or it might just be positively brilliant. Like deliberately hiding something in the most obvious place possible so you miss it. But it isn't quite like that. Well, anyway, I wanted to tell you this much. My thoughts swung back to my schoolroom. David, what will I do with Lundy now? I mean, if he comes back to school and we don't have all this settled, how will I treat him? Treat him normally. Only I don't think he'll be back right away. But beyond that, we're going to have to talk this out with Miss Alice as soon as possible, and I'm going to have to find out which men are behind these boys. Maybe go after the still. Suddenly, I was afraid for David. As if sensing this, he reached for my hand. Do you have to go after the moonshiners yourself, David? That's dangerous. You know it is. Those men don't stand meddlers. I know. But I can't get the federal marshals on the case without more evidence. And as for meddling, believe me, the blockaders are asking for it. These mountain men can guzzle all the corn liquor they please, but they start involving our school children? As we walked back to the mission house, David and I were both preoccupied with their thoughts. I was remembering that I had seen strangers several times during the last few weeks, and at the time I wondered about it. But now I knew the cove folk, at least by sight, and tourists did not ordinarily make their way so far back into the mountains. Those who took the trouble to journey to Cutter Gap had a reason. But my thoughts were so jumbled by all that David had told me that I could not, at the moment, recall the exact incidents involving the strangers. It was not until the next night that one of the scenes came back to me. About 2 weeks before, I had been hanging out some wash after dark, since that was almost the only time of day I dared invade Miss Ida's kitchen to do my personal laundry. And I had seen there strange men on horseback riding along the edge of the mission property. They had come out of the woods to the west behind the schoolhouse, had loitered out of sight behind the building for a time, and then had galloped off down the road northward toward Flagstop. The Flagstop. Most local people had mules, not horses, and I had never seen those horses or those men before. And few people in these parts galloped, with the exception of Miss Alice. I had tucked the incident away in my mind to tell David, but then had not thought about it again. Now, with all that had happened, he should know about it. Miss Alice and David had each gone off to their cabins. Miss Ida was reading by the big oil lamp in the parlor. To avoid her, I went outside on the porch. Should I tell David tonight? Suddenly, I found myself walking down towards his bunkhouse. It was not that I had any intention of inviting myself inside. It was a nice night. Perhaps he might be outside too. Halfway down the walk, I looked across the road and noticed that lamps were lit inside the bunkhouse with all the shades drawn tight. Unusual. David did not ordinarily close things up so completely. As I got closer, I thought I saw movement in the bushes close to the little building. I stood still to listen. There it was again, a branch moving, yet there was no wind this night. Not having any idea what was going on, I ducked behind a thicket of laurel bushes and held my breath listening. No sound except the gurgle of the stream and the low hum of voices inside the bunkhouse. Someone was with David. Hey, Linda. Holding my body very still, curiously, I parted two branches and peered through. Clouds were scudding across the moon, casting murky shadows. The foliage was inky, blurred before my eyes. Then a shadow moved and a pebble rolled down the incline toward the road. I stared at the place where I had seen the movement, but still I could see nothing. The darkness was impenetrable. Then momentarily the clouds parted and moonlight bathed the foliage in soft light. Whoever was hiding there had on dark clothes. I could almost see his face. Lundy! It was Lundy Taylor skulking in the bushes. At that instant, the bunkhouse door opened and Bob Allen stepped out on the stone step, with David silhouetted in the doorway. Certainly they did not suspect anyone of spying on them. They were still talking earnestly, though I was glad I had seen Lundy. I did not relish being discovered hiding like a fugitive, so I drew back even further into the shadows and gave up trying to peer out. After a time, I heard Mr. Allen's footsteps going briskly down the road. Then I waited for a while and looked out again. The pale moonlight caught Lundy's retreating form across the road, through the field and beyond the schoolhouse. This was not the time to talk to David about the three mysterious men. Perhaps it was not important. I would confess my hide-go-seek game to David tomorrow. Slowly, I walked up the hill to the big house. Ruby, May, and I were almost finished with our breakfast the next morning when David strode in looking weary, grizzled, his riding clothes and boots muddy. Ruby May, never reticent, asked in surprise, "Where have you been so early, preacher?" "Prince and I were having an early morning ride, that's all." He looked at me and grinned. "You know, mountains in the spring. Good way to get exercise. Ida, got any hot coffee out there?" Ruby May had not satisfied with the explanation. She prodded and hinted, but David parried her every query. Finally, she finished breakfast and left while I lingered over my coffee. "David, I have a confession to make." "Sounds interesting." "Last evening, while I was out for a little stroll, I saw someone hiding in the bushes near your bunkhouse. It turned out to be Lundy Taylor." David looked startled. "Did Lundy see you?" "I don't think so. That's my confession. I hid too. Well, more important, did he see Bob Allen? Yes, I'm sure he did. He saw him leaving. Thank God I didn't find anything this morning, or Bob Allen would be a dead man. How much do we have? Let me see. Oh, yeah, we got time. Lundy did not come back to school that Tuesday. When he was still absent on Wednesday and Thursday, David seemed relieved. I guess that he was going to use the lull to go scouting for the still, though he told me nothing. Actually, it was not until the following Tuesday during our regular weekly conference with Miss Alice that I learned what was happening. There, over after-dinner coffee in her cabin, David and I discussed the week gone by and planned for the week ahead. Miss Alice had the knack of making these Tuesday evenings a refreshing oasis in the midst of otherwise hectic lives. I often marveled at the interior peace of the woman was reflected so faithfully in her surroundings. Yeah, that means my house reflects my chaotic mind. Even the selection and arrangement of her possessions gave an aura of uncluttered calm. In addition, there was a directness in her approach to all of life, including the art of housekeeping, that never failed to fascinate me. Mrs. Alice was a woman to whom color, symmetry of line, and contrast of texture were important. She flouted the accepted custom of covering her tabletops with doilies or small scarves. The sheen and patina of the lovely old wood were all the decoration needed. In a pewter bowl, she could arrange with artistry a few well-polished apples or some nuts, or a piece of quartz picked up somewhere in the mountains along with some unusual leaves and berries. I reveled in all of this. Though David, manlike, noticed none of these details, he nevertheless responded to the atmosphere they created. Hey, Willow! On this particular Tuesday night, he sank gratefully into the easy chair, stretched his long legs, and sniffed appreciatively at the fragrant aroma of brewing coffee. Both Miss Alice and I were immediately aware that he had important news to discuss. We found the still, he began abruptly. We looked at him quizzically, not comprehending. You see, the men weren't there. The still had just been moved, but maybe I'd better begin at the beginning. Miss Alice's hand, pouring a cup of coffee, paused in midair. Who? What men? I don't know. In silence, Miss Alice finished pouring the coffee as we listened intently. Yesterday afternoon, Prince and I started in the direction of Big Lick Gap. You know how good the water of the Cold Springs branch is, as good as its name. Well, we got to the branch and Prince stopped and stretched his long neck down to drink. Then he began to acting strangely. He sniffed the water, snorted, and backed away. Wouldn't drink a drop. Right away, I knew something was wrong, so I dismounted and scooped up some of the water in my hands. You couldn't miss the smell of mash. That told me. I knew there had to be a still, maybe the one we were hunting for somewhere upstream. I started to follow the stream to its source and found the path along the branch trampled. Also, and this was odd, small branches had broken at more or less regular intervals and left dangling along the path. Then I saw a piece of copper tubing lying in the leaves. Well, right then, I decided it was too risky to go further. It was time to bring the United States Marshals in on it. I didn't dare use our new telephone, too public, so I rode to the telephone exchange in Lyleton and from there phoned the federal office in Knoxville. David paused, sipped his coffee, and then went on. Look at my baby. Oh, you can't see her. She's snoozing. David sipped his coffee and then went on. The marshal who answered seemed grateful for the tip and eager to move on it. Within an hour, they had 2 of their men on the train to El Pano. I was to meet them in that grove of trees behind the general store. They told me where to pick up 2 horses, which I was to bring with me for the agents. Apparently, they have connections all over for such details. By the time the marshals got to El Pano, it was a little past midnight, and so far as I could see, the streets were deserted. There was a bright moon out, so we pushed on immediately to Cold Springs Branch. But then we got to the place where I turned back before, one of the marshals said he thought I'd better not go on with them. He said that if they surprised the blockaders, bullets might fly. So I watched them light their hooded lanterns, wished them luck, and Prince and I rode on home. Then how did you find out what happened? I asked. Because one of the marshals, Gentry Long his name is, telephoned me today. Told me they had gone a mile or so upstream when the path ended abruptly at a rocky ledge. There, hanging from a branch at the edge of the woods, they had found a dummy stuffed with straw swinging in the breeze, like a man strung up. The usual warning message for revenue men. The marshals had wriggled on through the underbrush, finally worked their way to a clearing, but then they had been disappointed. There was nothing there but some pieces of copper tubing and a pile of devitalized lye. Somebody had warned the blockade runners, so they cleared out just in time. The ground was actually still warm. Officer Long said it had been a very large still, probably a production of 20 to 30 gallons of whiskey a day. So they want you to keep looking, Miss Alice asked. They think the still will be set up somewhere else. Oh, sure. Men around here don't scare easy. Weren't you tempted to go along with the agents, I asked curiously. I think I would have been. Not really. No point in my getting involved. Well, anyway, that still leaves us not knowing which men are in this. Frustrating, isn't it? Miss Alice nodded, saying nothing. Obviously, she was thinking hard, her mind roaming over the cove, cabin by cabin. This man? That one? I voiced the question which she had been plainly wrestling. David, who could have warned the moonshiners? Who could possibly have seen you? I have no idea. But the mountaineers have had a century of experience with this sort of thing. All revs are their mortal enemies. Anything goes, even bushwhacking. To the last person, they'll stick together against the agents. David, what's bushwhacking? My innocence seemed to amuse him. Bushwhacking, Christy, is their term for a murderous attack from ambush. But relax. They made their getaway. They're not going to harm me. Miss Alice broke in. David, I want to change the subject a bit. I would have an opportunity with thee. A what? She laughed at his bewildered look. It's a Quaker expression, David. In the community of friends, they speak often of opportunities. By an opportunity, they mean a strong inner urging to speak their mind about something that's burdening them. Oh, something about me is burdening you? Yes, your run-in with Ozias Holt. Fairlight Spencer told me about it. Well, I hope Fairlight told it straight. Anything I said to Ozias, he deserved. He wasn't going to work, and I wasn't going to pay him. If he wasn't going to work, I wasn't going to pay him. Miss Alice's voice was mild. I'm not passing any judgment on the rightness or wrongness of any part of it. All I want to point out is that there's now a breach between Ozias and you, so it's up to you to take the first steps towards righting it. Why me? He's the one who's in the wrong, because you're a preacher, David. Come on. David, I've been back here in the cove a little longer than you. One of the worst evils around here is nursing grudges, sometimes for years. Retaliating evil for evil is considered a virtue, the mark of strong character. Here, with this Ozias Holt situation, you've got a ready-made chance to demonstrate a better way. the strength of forgiveness. See, she's thinking what's going on in my brain. I fail to see how forgiving Ozias Holt for being a lazy bum would demonstrate anything to him other than men accept weakness. To him and the other men accept weakness. You need a bath. Don't give me that look. Stop chewing on your skin. David, no Christian ever has the right to sever any relationship with anybody out of anger or pique, or even injustice. No matter how much he disapproves of someone's actions, it is our place to demonstrate reconciliation, not judgment or revenge or retaliation. That's God's business, not ours. Her voice grew softer. Beware the chasms in thy life, David. Sooner or later, thee will fall down into the chasm thyself. She paused. David, I bring this up now simply because with the blockading problem unsolved, this is no time for misunderstandings around here. What do you think I should do? I suggest that you make a point of talking to Ozias. Extend the hand of friendship. At least try it, David. After all, David, when the lines of communication are cut so that two people can't even talk, what have you gained by them? All you've done is sever what may have been God's only route into a man's heart. I love this book. I love Miss Alice. I really do. Well, I guess you're right, said David slowly. He rose to end the conversation. I'll walk you to the big house, Christy, if you're ready to leave. David had little to say as we went up the hill. Thank you for joining me for Christy, chapter 20. We're about halfway through the book. And I hope to have many more days of live reading ahead. Okay? Take care. God bless. And hopefully we'll see you again really soon. Mwah!